gravitrons, I'm more gravity. Let's play chess. Okay, so just finished this chess game about 2 minutes ago. I'm really glad that my opponent and I both played accurate games, and I'm really glad to have won. As you all know, I only review my wins, so this is a candidate for review. Meets the criteria, and almost into the 90s in terms of accuracy. All right. So I have the black pieces. Starts with a flank. Loose costume starts with a flank opening, and I build pretty much a classic center. This is standard stuff. We're all in book. Bishop to f5 is outside of book and also inaccurate. The idea was mostly just to get my bishop onto an active square. I see now that my opponent played well with rook to e1, which prepares perhaps e4, and then kicking the bishop, causing black to lose a tempo of time. And now pawn to e4 as foretold, and instead of retreating right away, I decided to make some exchanges, first along the e file of pawns and then along the d file. Queen takes d1 and then rook takes d1, so the queens are off the board early. It's black's turn to move, and good for it because his bishop on f5 is under attack by the pawn at e4. We can capture that pawn, and black's doing well, right? Capture another pawn on c2. So the idea here for black is to trade pieces until this two pawns worth of material advantage puts black ahead enough to promote a pawn. White, on the other hand, will look for more dynamic play, more active play, something tactical and complications to try to get back the material that white is now in deficit. Rook to e1 and pawn to f6. So for this knight to d5, I guess I mishandled this. This would have been an inaccuracy here by black. I want to avoid knight to c7 check. We'll consult analysis, and I think maybe the better move was just king to d7, while the d file, or at least d1, is controlled by my bishop. It makes rook to d1 not the greatest move. And I think this might have been stronger for black. Castling queenside, yes, quite. Okay, I see that. Castling queenside here, strong for black. Placing the knight at d5 in jeopardy. The king is now safer than before. The c7 square no longer forks and is also under black control, so we're not worried about a fork on c7. We aren't after rook c7 either, but I think the other intangibles that go along with queenside castles for black here make for a more coordinated group of chess pieces. And knight takes e7, knight takes e7. Bishop e3, pawn to b6. Right. Now black has this really strong chain of pawns on the king side leading towards center, and another really strong chain of pawns on the queen side leading towards center. Rook to c1, and bishop to e4. I hope they're both computer best or close to it. Notice that the bishop has the freedom to move to e4, in part because of the structures, the pawn structures, both from which he vacated, both from the file on which he vacated are strong, and the file on which he landed. Those pawn structures behind him are also strong. Rook to c4, and bishop to d5. Probably going to be able to snag a pawn. I didn't. Interesting would have been bishop takes a2, the a2 pawn. Still not best though. Okay, I put king f7, which is pretty close to castles. King f7 keeps the king more relevant in the center, but also blocks one of the squares to which black's light square bishop might retreat. So kingside castles may be a slight improvement. I'd rather have the king protecting g7, well, in both cases g7's protect, but also protecting this e7 knight a second time. I don't know, maybe that wasn't such a concern really, given that how the knight at c6 is already protecting the e7 knight. So maybe kingside castle, like torch 4 light shows here, is a bit better than the move I played. King f7, still grand, well, not grand, still a good move. And you see that these pawn structures, I talked about how strong these pawn structures are taking away a lot of white's rook activity. That white has doubled rooks along the c file, so what? Black, it's not a big deal. You have to sacrifice a lot on c5 in order to get any kind of action or activity along the c file. On the other hand, it would probably be a sacrifice of a bishop for 2 pawns. These 2 pawns are out, and white might have some counterplay, right? With now the rook pressing and attacking the bishop at d5, there might be certain moves that allow black to spring an attack on the d5 bishop, because the white's g2 bishop and rook can both easily attack d5, one by way of after the exchanges, and the other by way of any kind of knight move by white. Rook to d8, and we find my opponent playing this sort of strange move, a3, but not all that strange if we think about it now because of the threat. Bishop takes a3, and just gobbling more and more pawns and destroying white's pawn structure and so on. So to avoid that, avoid the loss of pawn on a2, white plays the move pawn to a3. I decided to take off white's knight here. It's kind of, I had difficulty coming to grips with whether or not to do it, so I did it for the for the purpose, rather, not focus, for the purpose of time, in terms of initiative, and actually, as it turns out, clock. So we trade minor pieces on f3, and that knight was not really set to become a monster, but he was complicating things near the center, and I said, trade him off. More directly, I did the first half of a trade-off. Knight to d4, he's strong. This is a strong knight. And he can have, if white does not take action immediately, then he's going to become an even stronger knight if action is delayed. And so immediately was the call from white with Bishop takes d4. I'm in agreement with my opponent and not the engine on this. You will not be able to let a knight this strong just sit there, especially because what's coming from black is some backup. And yes, okay, maybe g4 makes it interesting, but some backup to the d4 knight by knight f5, at which point if you delay too long, it's bishop takes d4, knight takes d4, and that, my friends, will be enough for a win. 2 points of material plus this knight on d4 that cannot be challenged by a pawn. The bishop that can control that type of square, the dark squares, is gone. The knight that's there now is gone, but in his stead is just this second knight. White's bishop can't attack things, so the lowest level piece to be able to unseat the knight at d4 is a piece more valuable than the knight himself. The rook slides to d3 or d1. White does not want to give up the exchange. And all this there's in some variations, black will play knight to e2 check. Maybe this knight, if this bishop is still gone from f3 somewhere else, then just a straightforward fork. Knight to e2 check. King moves, and the knight captures on c1. So yeah, I'm in support of my opponent's move. Bishop takes d4 at this juncture as to be not an inaccuracy, but instead the best move in the position. C takes d4, attacking White's rook, and the idea is there's a lot of pressure for White to trade on the c file. We see one trade of rooks, and then I think in folly 2 trades of rooks, because now the rooks are off the board and black has a 2-point material lead. Bishop, okay, long scope and you know, the only long range piece on the board, but so what? Black's pawns are on dark squares. h6, we could have the entire army of black pawns on dark squares, and this bishop isn't nearly as strong as otherwise. Not only that, but the d pawn is passed and so on. So this is an endgame I saw back pretty much when I decided to play knight to d4 with most of this, that after these exchanges, black is doing very well. Even with the knight on the back rank, it's an endgame. He'll have a little bit of time to get more relevant. So this is a good endgame here. Maybe play here with black to move. Play it out against your friends, you know, your family members, whoever, and see what happens. I mean, black, I think, will be doing very well. With experienced players, black will do well in this position. The protected pass pawn on d4 and 2 extra pawns should be enough. A few moves, the game became a little bit easier for black after I would call this a blunder. Mistake is good enough. After the mistake a4, allowing black to win a piece for a pawn. Not really a piece for 2 pawns, but do we count the f2 pawn? And it's the trade of minor pieces is very much in black's favor. I'm not going to go over this, we'll just click through. The f-pawn is now unstoppable, and a resignation at a respectable point. Great game. Great game. I thought neither my opponent nor I had anything to hang our heads about, and it was exciting. The main thing was putting the pressure against white materially by going up uh, 2 pawns initially, then having my just sort of being good with or playing along with how I noticed that my pawns were almost entirely on black squares. That was a lot of it. And since I was low in time, if I wasn't low in time, this end game doesn't scare me. Right, even back here. And since I was low in time, that I was able to fork white, king, and bishop with the move e4 check. That really eased off a lot of pressure, and I kind of felt like, okay, I've got this. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you to my viewers. Thank you, Gravitrons. I'm More Gravity. Have a great night.